A new year brings with it a new series of airshow dispatches, and we start on the island nation of Singapore. A vibrant and modern city-state, Singapore has an airshow to match, held biannually at the purpose-built Changi Exhibition Centre. A trade show at heart, the Singapore Airshow still attracts some top-tier performers, 4 in 2020, and it would have been more if not for the coronavirus outbreak. The star act for many was China's own aerobatic team, August the 1st, performing in Singaporean skies for the very first time. The US military was out in full force too, with the F22A Raptor and the F35B Lightning II. And not to be outdone, a typically unique aerial display from the home team, a stunning show featuring 2 AH-64D Apaches sharing the sky with an F-15 SG. This is our pick of the action. It calls itself Asia's largest airshow. Welcome to the Changi Exhibition Centre and to the Singapore Airshow 2020. Beginning in 2008 to replace the Asian aerospace shows, the Singapore Airshow has grown to become one of the most important trade events on the aviation calendar and one of the only major airshows in Southeast Asia. And while many air arms have supported the show over the years, we start off with the home team, the Republic of Singapore Air Force, with one of their one-off integrated aerial displays. Singapore does have an official aerobatic team called the Black Knights, but they're only activated for a few years each decade, so for each of the editions of the Singapore Airshow where the Black Knights haven't been available, the RSAF have staged some truly unique aerial displays. We have some solo manoeuvres from the F-15 SG to start the show. Here it comes for a 4-point roll. The F-15 SG, or the F-15T as it was originally known, is a modified version of the F-15E Strike Eagle ordered by the RSAF after a 7-way competition which saw the Dassault Rafale finish in second place. The first batch of 12 F-15s were ordered in 2005, followed by 8 more 2 years later, and deliveries began in 2009. Since then, further orders have been placed, bringing the RSAF's F-15 fleet up to a total of 40 aircraft. This manoeuvre is called the SAM Weave, demonstrating how the F-15 can deploy decoy flares and evasive manoeuvring to throw off heat-seeking surface-to-air missiles. And now the F-15 crosses with the Apache pair in a manoeuvre called the Hammerhead. The RSAF has 17 AH-64D Apaches. The Apache longbow can simultaneously track up to 128 targets and engage up to 16 of them at any one time.
Both the Apaches will pull up into a vertical climb, then making a spiral descent to demonstrate the agility of this attack helicopter. which is designed to fight and survive.
The F-15SG performs a minimum radius turn, and you can clearly see the twin afterburners of those two General Electric F110 GE129 engines, producing a combined 59,000 pounds of thrust. Now the final manoeuvre of the display, the F-15 enters a vertical spiral climb behind the two Apaches with a spectacular flare dump. Not one of the main aerial display performers, but the first public day of the Singapore Airshow 2020 featured a flypast by a US Air Force B-52 Stratofortress. The earliest B-52s first flew in 1952. This is an H variant which entered service in 1961 and is expected to remain flying with the US Air Force for at least another 3 decades. That's thanks in part to a comprehensive upgrade scheme which is likely to include a replacement for their 8 TF-33 engines. A very potent Singapore debut now. This is the US Marine Corps F-35B Lightning II based at Iwakuni in Japan. And I say it's a potent debut because the Lightning is likely to be the future backbone of the Republic of Singapore Air Force's fighter fleet. Some 4 F-35Bs are currently on order for test and evaluation purposes, with options for 8 more, and the type is expected to replace the Air Force's F-16C and D fleet from 2030. The highlight of the display is, of course, this demonstration of the jet's hovering capabilities. This is unique to the B variant of the F-35, which has a directional exhaust as well as 2 downward-facing roll posts on each side of the fuselage and a centrally located lift fan. This means the F-35B sits on 4 carefully calibrated columns of air, making it much more stable than the Hawker Harrier with its rotating nozzle system. All this extra equipment does mean the F-35B takes around 30% less fuel than the A variant, and it's also limited to just 7G, that's 2G less than the F-35A. But the advantages are enormous. For example, the F-35B is capable of operating from aircraft carriers without the need for catapults or a tailhook. The F-35B is currently used by the US Marine Corps, as well as a joint Royal Air Force and Royal Navy force. It's also expected to be used by Singapore and the Republic of Korea Navy. Another 5th generation American stealth fighter now, and like the F-35, this one is also performing its very first flying demonstration in Singapore. This is the F22A Raptor of the F22 demonstration team based at Langley Air Force Base, Virginia. The display is flown by Major Joshua Cabo Gunderston. And in fact, the Singapore Airshow 2020 was Cabo's first ever public display, after he took the reins from the outgoing Raptor display pilot, Paul Loco Lopez, at the end of 2019. This display will really show off the aircraft's thrust vectoring and super manoeuvrability over the next few minutes. This manoeuvre is called the J-turn. The F-22 pitches up to a high angle of attack, stalls, pivots round its left wingtip, and then dives back to Earth before recovering from the descent. The F-22 has a top speed of Mach 2.25 and can supercruise at Mach 1.8. Compare that to the F-35B's top speed of just Mach 1.6, and that has quite limited supercruise ability as well. And here we go with the first of the really unique moves. This looks almost like a flat spin. In truth, it's a pedal turn during an incredibly high alpha descent, aided of course by the F-22's thrust vectoring capability. And here's another extraordinary manoeuvre, the power loop. This once again uses the aircraft's thrust vectoring and the enormous power of its two Pratt & Whitney FW119PW100 engines with a combined 70,000 pounds of thrust. Here, a loaded roll. And this is the tail slide, with the aircraft sitting in a vertical climb until the airspeed bleeds away to zero. We've seen the likes of the Sukhoi Su-27 and Su-30 perform this move several times on this programme, as well as several jet trainers like the L-39 and MB-339, but this is the first time we've seen it from a Western frontline fighter. And I think that's the longest I've ever seen a tail slide held by any jet aeroplane. Truly incredible. And now in at the slow for a low speed, high alpha pass. And when I say high alpha, what I mean by that is the angle of attack between the airflow and the aircraft's direction of travel. The F-22 is capable of flying at up to 60 degrees of alpha without losing roll control, and that's the kind of angle attack we saw during the likes of the J-turn and the pedal turn. A fair bit less than that on this occasion. One final pass to end the display. Yet another Singapore debut now with the aerobatic team of China's People's Liberation Army Air Force. They are known as Ba Yi, or August the 1st, which is the date on which the People's Liberation Army was founded back in 1927. The aerobatic team itself was formed in 1962, flying the Shenyang J5, which was the Chinese license-built version of the MiG-17. They later flew the Chengdu J10, the Chinese version of the MiG-21, and then transitioned to the Chengdu J10 Vigorous Dragon in 2009, and that's the aircraft you see here. The J10 is a Chinese multi-role combat aircraft which made its first flight in 1998, and it is built as a low-cost fighter. You can get almost 5 of these for the cost of a single F-22.
Again, demonstrating the maneuverability of the J10s in coming in down the Willis Delta formation, and they're about to make a loop.
You'll notice the interesting use of coloured smoke during this display. August 1st used to use very attractive wingtip smoke winders until the aircraft were fitted with conventional smoke systems in 2016. They work by injecting dyed diesel into the hot exhaust where it's vaporised. Each jet only has a single smoke tank, so they can only produce one colour per plane per sortie, but the colours used by each jet seemed to chop and change throughout the week, which led to some rather interesting combinations. The team's 2 solo pilots now run in for the scissor break, followed by an opposing pass. August 1st was supposed to be one of at least 3 big aerobatic teams at the Singapore Airshow 2020. Unfortunately, Indonesia's Jupiter aerobatic team and the Republic of Korea's Black Eagles pulled out due to the coronavirus outbreak. It's ironic in a way that the team that did show up were the Chinese team, but of course all team members had been undergoing extensive checks in the weeks before and during the airshow, and the show did pass without incident. Watch now for the Upward Blossom, a 4-ship vertical bomb burst.
To the left as our 4 fighters prepare for the Upward Blossom, and that's coming up in just a moment.
The team's appearance marked 30 years of ties between Singapore and China, and these Blossom manoeuvres were said to show the 2 countries' relationship blooming forever. And now the J10 demonstrates its own high alpha performance with this slow pass. And on the next pass, you'll get an idea of the J10's amazing sustained roll rate of up to 300 degrees per second. That's faster than almost any other modern frontline fighter, roughly double that of the Super Hornet, for example.
This maneuver requires a pilot to have very accurate
With one final bomb burst, August 1st conclude their display, and we round off our look back at the Singapore Airshow 2020. My thanks to Nigel Woolley behind the camera this time around, and stay tuned for many more episodes in this 3rd series of Airshow Dispatches. We hope you can join us next time for the first ever Aqaba Airshow at the home of the Royal Jordanian Falcons. But in the meantime, thank you very much for joining me. From me, Adam Landau, it's goodbye for now.